Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of Beneath the Surface. I am your host, Purposeful Porsha. Today's episode is love, being in love with a narcissist and being in a traumatic relationship. I was inspired by the Sean Diddy Combs trial to bring this episode to life, to make sure that we're able to talk about things that are in relationships, whether we're the narcissist or you are with a narcissist. We have as our special guest therapist Maya Harris. She's a licensed therapist and a retired lawyer from New Jersey, now residing in Maryland. She's the founder of Attuned Psychotherapy and Attuned Choice, which is to help people break free from narcissistic abuse. She empowers high achievers to trust themselves, to rebuild confidence, and to break self betrayal patterns by using subconscious tools. This was such a great conversation that Maya and I had, and I am so happy that I'm able to bring these tools and lessons to you and beneath the surface. So I want to thank Maya Harris for being on our show. This is such a very powerful subject that we're talking about, diving into the mental side of beneath the surface. And Maya and I have had discussions prior to this episode about how narcissistic relationships, traumatic relationships can affect us. Being in a narcissistic relationship in the past, um, I was able to pull questions, which we can elaborate on further, on how these relationships can take us to a whole nother level. And she's been such a blessing on helping navigate me through the process. And I wanted to have her on the show so she can help drop jewels and give important information and tips to the listeners and to the people that are watching. So, again, thank you, Maya, for being on Beneath the Surface. I appreciate all of your wisdom and all of your great advice that you're going to share with us today. I want to
Of
start
course. Thank you for having me.
all the way from Maryland. Appreciate you. I want to start with something that is a very powerful question for myself, and I'm pretty sure people who are in this web want to know, how does being in love with a narcissist impact a person's mental health on a daily basis?
So I would say just not to use any, technical terms or anything, but just to be completely simple, you'll notice emotional exhaustion and fatigue right away.
Mm-hmm.
And even though that's not a mental health disorder, I try to get people to recognize before things develop into a mental health disorder. So if you're noticing a feeling of overwhelm or a feeling of um, burnt outedness, that's probably the biggest impact initially. What people tend to do is push past that feeling and tell themselves they don't have a choice. And if you continue to push the body past its limits, then you start developing um, what we call clinical mental health disorders. So things like anxiety. We all have anxiety, but you may start to notice your worrying is keeping you up at night or waking you up at night. You may notice your stress level starts to interfere with your appetite um, um, and your ability to concentrate. And you'll notice kind of your mood is just not is off. So
Mm-hmm.
you may, normally be not be a bubbly person, but you also know you just don't feel yourself. You might start isolating socially. That's another sign that it's affecting your mental health. And you may actually sleep more. Some people lose sleep, and some people sleep more just to escape. So
Hmm.
those are some of the ways that can affect mental health. I don't like people to walk away not knowing that mental health is health. It's tied to your physical health. So what we typically see with narcissistic abuse is people start to develop physical reactions to being in that kind of relationship. We all know stress is the number one killer, and it's the number one root cause of different diseases that are preventable. Um, but what happens when you're in a relationship with a narcissist is the stress is constant. It's a constant. So you'll see maybe 75, 80% of the time, there is just aggravation. There may be tension. Even if things are quiet, there's like tension. Somebody's not speaking to the other person. So it's a chronic stress that over time goes from mental health into a lot of physical health issues like high blood pressure. Um, you may see flare ups with your skin. You
Hmm.
may see yourself start to lose hair, and you may even see your body start to attack itself in the form of different autoimmune disorders with that level of chronic stress.
I know for me, I fell into depression. I wore depression. Like people will walk up to me all the time, "Are you okay?" Like I just look sad. I just carry the weight of grief on me. Um and you start like how you feel on the inside is how you start to look on the outside. Unconsciously you're walking around looking tired like you said, or your clothes are discombobulated. You can't mask it anymore when it's heavy, you know? And, gaining weight and just looking just distorted. You can't even think. So, yeah, for sure. I have another question for you. Can you explain the cycle of emotional abuse in a narcissistic relationship, and why is it so hard to break free of these relationships?
Um, well, one of the things that I'm going to do, if it's okay with you, is kind of change the question a little bit, because I think one of the reasons that this type of relationship dynamic gets lost is that people hear abuse and they turn it off. And they say, well, I'm not being abused. So I don't need to listen to that. Let me listen to it for somebody else because my situation is not abuse.
Mhm.
Um, so I don't too much tell people like here's a cycle, but I will tell them there is a um almost like a matrix where the person who is the perpetrator or predator, the abuser, the manipulator, they have a set of traits,
Mhm.
right, that fit in a set of needs that fit with the person that they're connected to, the loved one of the narcissist, fit within their traits like a glove, like a hand in a glove. And so a lot of times what you'll see is this perfect fit initially.
Mhm.
When you talk about cycles, you'll see a perfect fit, but it's a perfect fit in a really toxic way because the dynamic is one person is showing up with all these needs
Yeah.
and they're and they show up with all these needs, but they're not showing up to acknowledge that anyone else has needs.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And they have power, right? And there's usually some type of power that is assumed,
Mm-hmm.
or it's either assumed or it's established up front
Mm-hmm.
really quickly. Sometimes just by the nature of the relationship. Like if someone is your mother, if the narcissist is your mother, that's an automatic assumption of authority,
Mm-hmm.
right? If the person is a police officer or president of the United States, that's an automatic assumption of authority.
Mm-hmm.
So that person is going to automatically have this presence, like, I have a right to tell you
A
what's
hold on.
best.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Yeah. And I'm the expert and I need to help you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the whole time they're there to get their needs met, and they're going to mask it as though they're here to help you. But
Mm-hmm.
their needs are the priority. And typically the loved one is someone whose traits happen to um, make them someone who wants to meet the other's needs, wants
Yeah.
to meet the needs that, you know, the people they love have.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's harder to see if you just look for, like, if you go straight into what's the cycle of abuse, but it is a cycle where it starts with, a really fast establishment of authority
Mm-hmm.
over one individual. There, we are not equals, we are not peers. But don't put it past a a person who gives you the impression that you are equal.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Um, you may see the power imbalance show up right away, and it's very overt. But there are people who there are narcissists who will put you on the pedestal. And so that's kind of like an illusion. Like they're making you feel like you're
Best thing that they've ever had.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, and you have all this power over me because no one's ever,
Mm-hmm.
I've never met anyone
I've never
like.
loved like this. I've never had. So can we change it a little bit and let's tap into current news right now, because the question is, like, with this Diddy trial, why didn't Cassie leave if she had access to just leave? But she was younger than him. He brought her in, he groomed her, he had, like you're sharing, like this power over her financially, power over her with the celebrity status. And she wanted to be famous. She needed his access to be where she wanted. I mean, there's some things I'm missing in saying with this, what's happened, but overall, only those people who've been in relationships that were traumatic or with a narcissist can say, well, hey, it's not that easy. He has something over her. But there's people who maybe they're the narcissist that say, well, she could have just left, or you know what I mean? Or people who just can't compute like that hold over someone. Can you touch on that and bring it to like what current news is today with this question?
Yes, absolutely. um I think, there's always going to be um the the theory that a person who is in that situation could just walk
Mm,
and could choose to leave. But what people don't understand is, I don't care if it's the person has money, you want a family, you want what it does. We're getting lost in worrying about she wanted a career. It could be she wanted anything, just a relationship.
Just wanted to be loved. Right. Mhm.
That is a choice for the person to just leave. But the main thing that that person has over you, the narcissist has over Cassie or whoever the person is the psychology of it. Like they have control over your mind. Your mind is what you use to make a choice.
Mhm.
So if someone has mind control, you're done. Like it doesn't matter if they're blackmailing you, if you can't leave because you don't have any money. It's those things can be resolved. And that's what I hear a lot of people who are um against, are questioning why she stayed so long. Um your mind, your perspective, you don't trust your own perspective
Mm, mm,
when
mhm,
someone does these mind games on you.
mhm.
And so once you no longer trust yourself, you don't trust your judgment, then and essentially you take on the abuser's way of thinking about things and their perspective. You no longer have a perspective. If someone asks your perspective, you're saying what the narcissist's perspective is.
That's so true. That's so true. They tap into your insecurities and make your insecurities magnified where you feel like you can't do anything without them, or you can't function without the way that they say things or see things. Like you start to morph into what they believe because like you said, it's the whole mind control. You start doubting yourself. So when people say, "Oh, it's it's called self-esteem." Well, if someone is in your mind altering your esteem of yourself,
Yeah, you don't
then
have a self.
have a self anymore. You are now them. Mhm. Absolutely.
And then we talk about self, like Cassie was 19.
Yeah.
We're
37, right?
fully formed adults mentally until we reach our late 20s. Um, so essentially, your capacity to kind of make a choice is really off. It's not fully developed yet. Um,
What is the exact age? You said your late 20s and we get into relationships, heavy relationships early. Yeah, so you're
that
not.
was how our parents' generation
Yeah.
did it. Like, if you're not married with a family by the time you're 28, I don't know what it was in our parents' generation, but I
18.
felt like for us, it was like 28.
I got married at the first 27. Yeah. Mhm.
Hmm. And if you went past, like, if you went into the 30s,
You something wrong.
something wrong, something wrong. And because you waited to 28, that means you really, you did your thing, you got your degrees, you may have even bought a house. So we thought we were doing something waiting until we were 28, which would have technically been our first year of adulthood.
Oh wow, that's deep. 28. I thought you were going to say like 25 or so, not 28. That's crazy.
Yep.
But he swooped her up at 19, just like not to go into the other one, but like R. Kelly and they got these girls.
That's why they prey on
Yeah,
that age.
yeah.
That's why. So essentially, like if we were to actually make the the neurobiology, which says, okay, you're now an adult at 27, 28. Um, if we were to follow that for when we say there's child rape or child molestation, child abuse, that would make more sense.
Mm.
If we were to say, he has no business messing with anybody of 27 or 26 or even 25, but
Mhm.
19?
Yeah, that's crazy.
You was just 15 last week. Like you was just in middle school.
That's crazy. That's crazy. And so it makes so much sense that, and that kind of like segues like into my next question about blame, because the victim basically blames themselves. You know what I mean? For getting caught up in the cycle. I mean, I know I could talk from my own personal experience. I know I did. Like, and then you have to go into the cycle of forgiving yourself when you're removed from it, you know? So, let's talk about, why do victims blame themselves for the abuse? And how can they begin to overcome that shame? Like that amount of layer and guilt that's on you is it I mean, it took me 5, 6 years just to think that I was clear of that. Um, just imagine people who were married to that for a long extent of time and don't know that there's it don't know it's okay to get out. So let's talk about, why do victims blame themselves?
Yeah. So they're coming in to adulthood, into relationships, with shame in the first place. And shame is kind of, it's invisible in a
Mhm.
lot of ways. So it's not like I can say, oh, they had a flare up. We could see, the rash on their face or something. Like shame is something you don't necessarily know you have. Or if you have it, you're so uncomfortable with it, you almost act as if it doesn't exist.
Mhm.
But shame is like just really believing that you are um, not worthy enough to be part of the human race.
Mm, mhm.
That's really what the original like there are neurobiological purposes that different words and emotions have. And so shame has the purpose of separating us from the group, from the tribe, from our community,
Mhm.
separating us because we've done something that is just unforgivable.
Mhm. Mhm.
Well, when most of us carry shame, it's not for something that extreme.
Right.
It's for something like I got a divorce or I dropped out of school, you know. But by nature, if it's something so many people go through and you're not going to be the first or the last, it can't be that you're so bad that you need to not be around people,
Mhm.
not part of, like you're not human. So the danger is that shame makes us isolate and makes us not speak up and
Mhm.
not share
Mhm.
what we went through. And so then other people really do, they begin to carry shame because they really think no one else knows what this is like. No one else knows my secret. And
Mhm.
so when you talk about relationships, that's definitely going to be secret, secret, secret. Um, People will show up with shame if in their upbringing there were secrets, right? Like families that have, this way of not sharing things and something happened, but you don't know what. Well, as a child, you learn to get comfortable with that. And you learn to, feel like, okay, there's always going to be something that I don't know, and I'm not entitled to know.
So, you know, this subject can go on and on and on because it's just so it's so many layers to it. And And right now, it's kind of almost like we're going to have to do a show after the show because, I mean, and as you know, Maya, you're going to be a frequent guest because we have to do more of a deeper dive into not just this subject, but all the other subjects that come for the mental capacity of what I'm trying to unfold and snatch the layers off. So, unfortunately, we're going to have to start to wrap this episode up, just this one, but we're going to do a live. Stay tuned. We'll do a live. But I want to know, as a person who's a therapist who deals with this on a daily basis, what are some key tools or advice that you can give to the people who are listening to this episode? And also, how can they, if they want to reach out to you or get, more personal advice from you yourself, can you give them that information as well?
Sure. So I tell people, you can know, a lot of people are wondering, how do I know if I'm even dealing with a narcissist? So I tell people, use your number one tool, which is yourself. So you'll be able to look at your behaviors, your body, your thoughts, and your feelings to know whether or not you're dealing with a narcissist. So some behaviors you may see are you're walking on eggshells. You may see you're silencing yourself. It's a lot of stuff you normally would say that you don't say. Or you find yourself editing some of your best qualities just to appease that person. Your thoughts, you may start having trouble remembering things. You may start to um, uh, be more disorganized or foggy, like have brain fog. And feeling, you may feel like in your body, just again, the exhaustion, the fatigue. So, really looking at, why am I confused all the time? Why am I tired? Why do I keep getting these headaches? Why am I suddenly not talking and speaking up for myself and being more walking in the personal power that I had before? Why do I not know who I am anymore? So it's so difficult sometimes without a professional to detect whether or not your loved one is dealing with high narcissist traits. So that's why I tell people, look at yourself, your responses, your reactions, and that's usually more reliable. It's hard to deny if you haven't slept since you've started dealing with this person.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Um, I am, if people want to find me, I am based in Maryland. So for therapy, those people, listeners who are in Maryland can find me on psychologytoday.com. I'm listed in the therapist, find a therapist directory under attuned psychotherapy. And they'll be able to book an appointment. And then for coaching, you can follow me at Attune Choice. And then you can also find me on Psychology Today and book through there as well. For coaching, clients can be anywhere in the world. For therapy, they will have to be in the state of Maryland.
I appreciate you so much. And let me tell you something. We just started to like scratch the surface, but I for sure need to have another conversation with you about one subject that's important to me, and that is trauma bonding. I think that we definitely need to talk about that and also the tools that a person can recognize that they're trauma bonding, also how to stop that cycle. So, I'm so happy that you came on the show. Thank you so much. And this is not the last that you will hear or see Maya Harris. I'm so grateful for her. And again, I am Purposeful Porsha, and thank you for tuning in to Beneath the Surface. Take care.